Dark Souls has many Berserk references, and Elden Ring is no exception. So let's take a look at some of the Berserk references in Elden Ring. And right at the start, the first thing you notice is the giant golden shining tree. And the Earth tree is inspired by the Helix tree in Berserk. Now you may say that giant trees are typical in fantasy stories, but keep watching and you'll see that in this case it's highly likely not. For the next one we have the Prisoner class, and this is a one-to-one from the manga. I mean, they didn't even change the name. Griffith was a prisoner and the class is called Prisoner. Moving on, we have the Sword Monument, which is clearly inspired by the Hill of Swords in Berserk. For this next one, again, you may say it's typical, but from what we know about From Software and their many inspirations from Berserk, the Great Sword is highly likely inspired by Dragon Slayer, which is God's sword. I mean, the description solidifies it. And also for this attack shown in the screen, we'll get back to it. Another Guts reference is the Arsenal Charm. I mean, look at the description. It says that it was derived from an unusual greatsword once wielded by a hero hungry for vengeance. I mean, that's basically Guts. And Guts even has an arsenal of weapons in his possession, what with the prosthetic arm and all. General Radahn is also heavily inspired by not one but two characters from Berserk. And if you look at King Geiserik and Zod, you'll immediately spot the similarities. And just for reference, this isn't the first time these two inspired designs in Dark Souls. King Geiserik inspired the Nameless King in Dark Souls 3, and Zod inspired the Taurus Demon in Dark Souls 1. For this one, it's not that big, but it's worth mentioning. And Melania's helmet is clearly inspired by Farnese's helmet. And here is where we'll bring back the Earth Tree again, and Leyndell is clearly inspired by Falconia. As they are both at the foot of a giant tree, they are both called royal capitals, and both are led by a kingly figure, which are Morgott and Griffith. I'm sure people will find many similarities between them, both the capitals and the trees. Now the Earth tree doesn't seem so typical, does it? This next one is also not that big, but I'll let you interpret it however you want, as we clearly still don't have much information on this character. And there is Miquella, which may be inspired by Griffith, but really for now we only have the fact that they're leaders loved by their people, and they try to achieve the impossible. Maybe also their feminine side in design. We'll get a good picture at Miquella in the coming DLC and see what he's like. Now going back to that attack from the Great Sword, that attack is called Lion's Claw. It's an Ash of War, and it is clearly inspired by Guts' attack when wearing the Berserker armor. This next one is a one-to-one from the manga, and the Crystal Tears in Elden Ring are undoubtedly inspired by the Crystal Tears in Berserk, and not many people will remember this chapter, but in this chapter 83 of Berserk, Griffith sheds his last tears before losing his humanity, and these tears are called Crystal Tears. I mean, at this point you can't doubt Miyazaki when it comes to Berserk inspirations. Blight is clearly inspired by Guts, similar to how Artorias was in Dark Souls 1. They all share that same pose. A lot of people have gone a little more than this to say that Rani is inspired by Shirka, or Shirke, due to her spiritual relationship to Blight and how after she's gone, Blight loses control, similar to how Shirka, or Shirke, is the only one able to bring Guts back from Berserker mode when he loses control, and they have a special spiritual relationship. I like these discussions and speculations, and this is why I love Souls games. They keep people thinking for years after the games come out, whether it's lore or inspirations or anything. The Malekith armor is also clearly inspired by the Berserker armor. Miyazaki has tried in Dark Souls 2 to create the Berserker armor with the Outrider Knight, you remember that enemy, and now this is the closest to that with Malekith armor. For this next one, it's also not that big but worth mentioning, and the giant face in Stormveil Castle seems to be inspired by Ganishka's face in Berserk. For this one, you can see the similarities between this picture in Albinoric village and Guts' homeland. I mean, it's a one-to-one. That's a lot of references, and I'm sure there are a lot more. I hope you liked this video. I like to find inspirations from Berserk in Souls games. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.